Ready for another edition of Warpaint TV? Brought to you by Coppin Transmission, Olathe, Kansas, 913-768-1555. Are you ready for some real football?
Welcome back to Warpaint TV September 8, 2011. Nick, we're just 3 days away from the start of the Kansas City Chiefs season, defending their AFC Western Division title. What do you think coming up this Sunday?
Well, I mean, it's going to be fun atmosphere. Arrowhead opening day is always a great thing. Hopefully, it's going to be nice weather, which appears it will be. I'll give Gary Lezak a little ribbon. We're going to do our show on Channel 41 every Sunday morning again, so we'll certainly get the weather forecast. Definitely check that out. But, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's been a tumultuous off-season. It's been a lot of chaos, a lot of doubt, a lot of frustration with fans. The preseason was a bad one for the Chiefs. It wasn't handled very well. We have no idea what to expect, which, may not be a bad thing, because hopefully we can be as pleasantly surprised as we were a year ago, even though a few people, myself and Bob Pesco, predicted 10-6. It turned out to be that way, so it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. But opening day is special. I hope everybody paints the town red on Friday, comes out on Sunday, supports this team, and we just get past what happened and just look ahead.
Nick, you brought me to Warpaint Illustrated a couple years ago from taking a Chiefs fans approach. I'm getting some private messages just talking about the concern with the Chiefs, and that is about Scott Pioli. And when you look at this team and the free agencies brought in this year, Kerry Colbert, hadn't played in 3 years, and his last year in 2008 he had 348 yards receiving, the entire year. Jared Gaither, who's a beast. He's a specimen. 6'9", 350 pounds, but he didn't play last year. He was on injured reserve. Chiefs Jeremy Urban, the wide receiver who's going to be playing opposite of Dwayne Bowe, he was on injured reserve. As of Thursday, 12 o'clock noon, and we're taping this, there hasn't been any wheeling and dealing that we've seen of Scott Pioli. Scott Pioli came here in 2009 with the reputation of being the wheeler and dealer, being this great evaluator of talent. Tony Moyaki just went on injured reserve. There's some concern with the Chiefs roster, coming to this Sunday. Is Scott Pioli's reputation at stake this season because of it?
I don't think so. I think it's the circumstances of the situation, what happened in the lockout. I mean, let's face it. 2010 was a special year. 2011, let's flip a coin. We have no idea. And Scott Pioli probably flipped the same coin and said, we have no idea what we're going to be. Are they better on paper? Yeah, they're better on paper than they were a year ago. But they're also lighter in the coaching staff. They don't have Charlie Weiss, which is going to be huge. They don't have Tony Miyake. They don't have Jonathan Baldwin. But they don't have the cohesiveness that they formed because they had an off season to work together. I mean, pretty much all bets are off. And if I'm Scott Pioli, yeah, we can sit here and say, well, we want this guy or we want that guy. Or we didn't get this guy in free agency. And it really boils down to what's the best situation right now. You mentioned those guys. I'll give you an example. You mentioned those guys. You look at the Oakland Raiders when they were building their dynasty. Every cast-off journeyman guy who'd been out of the league, what did they do? They won. They won football games. They won championships. I'm not saying that's the same thing's going to happen in Kansas City, but because a lot of things. But I don't think anybody needs to be critical of Scott Pioli. Yes, after the 2009 draft, when basically all we're going to get out of that is Ryan Suckup, a kicker, Mr. Irrelevant. Tyson Jackson's been a bust. Alex McGee is gone. Donald Washington hasn't panned out. You go down the list, and these guys aren't around on this roster. They're not making an impact. But you look at 2010, outstanding draft, the best in Chiefs history. You look at 2011, potentially not going to probably produce the same amount of starters long term, but guys that fit to what he tried to do. Again, in 2009 he comes in very short order, has to use Carl Peterson's people to evaluate talent. That's difficult. He has to hire a head coach. Todd Haley was the last guy standing. It was him or Chan Gailey, who happens to be coaching Sunday Buffalo. Those are the two choices that boil down to because the Chiefs were so late in the process in deciding, A, to hire Scott Pioli, what to do with Herm Edwards. And people have to factor all this in. Yes, am I critical that he didn't sign Abreu Franklin, but he went after Nnamdi Asomugha, so you got to give him credit for that. He went after Jonathan Joseph, the cornerback that ended up with Houston. So, you got to give him credit for that. He tried to sign guys, but again, are they good fits for Kansas City? I love the additions. I love Kelly Craig. outstanding. Steve Bressman, we don't know what we're going to get in him. He's either going to be the player that he was in Arizona, or he's going to be a guy that's going to step up and be the true slot receiver this team hasn't had in a really long time. Clearly, the Dexter McCluster experiment didn't work. So, you add those pieces. Brandon Siller would have started for this football team this year. There's no question in my mind. His injury is going to be key, too. So, and then LaRon McClain, you get a guy, you have a thumper. You got another Tony Richardson. Sometimes it's the small pieces that you add before you hit the home runs. I will say this. The Chiefs are $33 million under the cap. That's going to carry into 2012. They're going to find out, if Todd Haley's the right coach. They're going to find out if this young core is good enough to take them to the next level. And they mixed in a few veterans to kind of bridge the gap for their shortcomings. But listen, Jared Gaither's the best tackle this team has, period. There's not a better one on this roster right now, in my opinion. Doesn't mean he's going to start. Doesn't mean he's going to play. And, yeah, he may have missed a year ago. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you got to make some small adjustments before you can make the big adjustments. You've got to walk, be patient. And then when you have the opportunity to strike, you've got to be ready for it. I think this team's geared to 2012.
Okay, with that being said, you're saying being patient. Chiefs fans were upset when Tony Gonzalez was traded for next year's second-round draft pick. That pick was and is Javier Arenas. He's still playing behind Brandon Flowers and Brandon Carr. Because people recognize that. People see Tony Gonzalez being successful. Yes, Tony Moyake was here to be Tony Gonzalez' replacement, but the guy that was picked with that Tony Gonzalez trade was Javier Arenas. Are you still patient with the Javier Arenas? Do you see him coming in, or is he still going to be a nickelback? That second-round draft pick is still a nickelback.
But that's fine. They need a nickelback. They didn't have one. You're looking at Maurice Leggett, who did a pretty good job, but he was injury-prone. They need a nickelback. You can't play in the National Football League unless you got 4 cornerbacks. You can't play defense. They have 4 cornerbacks now. They've got 2 starters in Brandon Flowers and Brandon Carr. Arenas is insurance in case Scott Pioli can't sign it. Again, you build to your strengths. I always say address your strengths before you address your weaknesses on a football team. It is far easier to do that because if you can't address a weakness, then fortify something that is strong. Make sure that you've got quarterbacks in the pipeline like they have. The Chiefs have 3 young Matt Castle's 29, but they got 2 young quarterbacks and one in Ricky Stanzi, who I think is going to be starting for this team in 2 years. You've got a little bit of depth at running back. Yeah, you've got Thomas Jones, but you're developing Dexter McCluster. Wide receiver is an area in which they're gonna struggle a little bit. So at this point, you gotta look at everything. I got no problem. Listen, without Javier Arenas as a nickelback last year, this football team doesn't win 10 games. Forget about his return abilities and his return duties. Again, everybody has to be patient. This is not a marathon. I mean, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's going to take time. The Chiefs have been bad for so long. I mean, since 2003 and Dick Vermeil, 1 year under Herm Edwards, they've been pretty bad. They've been a bad football team. Bad decisions, bad signings, bad drafting, a combination of things. The last 2 years, the team is better on paper. You've got more young players. They're signing these guys long term. They're putting their core together. And then that's when you bring in the Kelly Greggs and you bring in the Brandon Sillers and the Ron McCranes and the guys like, that want an opportunity. Jared Gaither, who wants to play here, went out to Oakland. Yeah, he may have, quote-unquote, failed his physical. He didn't want any part of that organization. That's why he didn't sign with the Raiders. That had nothing to do with anything else. So he wanted to come here. The Chiefs you have to take some chances. But again, they're not spending a lot of money. They're not spending a lot of money, and that's okay. Now, if they develop this core, they make a decision on their head coach for the future, and they've got their game plan for years 4, 5, and 6, which is what he has to start planning for today, Scott Pioli we're talking about, then we can complain. But have no expectations this year. I've been telling every Chiefs fan, love them, support them, enjoy it, but don't have any expectations.
Okay, a lot is being made about Tyson Jackson and a 3-4 defense. This is his 3rd season. They said he's more of a 4-3 guy. His job is to take on blockers, in a 3-4 defense. I looked up some stats, and from 1989 to 1991, the Kansas City Chiefs played a 3-4 defense under the defensive coordinator, Bill Cowher. In 1998, the Kansas City Chiefs used the 2nd overall pick in the draft to take Neil Smith out of Nebraska. He struggled his rookie season, but again, his defensive coordinator from 1989, 1990, and 1991 was Bill Cowher. And under Bill Cowher, Neil Smith played defensive end and had 6.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles in 1989. He had 9.5 sacks in 1990, and he went to the Pro Bowl with 8 sacks and 3 forced fumbles in 1991. I don't buy the argument that Tyson Jackson can't is having trouble playing in a 3-4. He needs to come into his own. When a draft pick taken early, just like Neil Smith was, Tyson Jackson's picked early too, he has to be that player that Chiefs fans expect. Because, Nick, Chiefs fans expect this guy to be that kind of a player.
He's not the same player. He's not in Neil Smith's class. He's not in Neil Smith's class. Mentally, physically, I mean, financially, he's not even in his class. He's making a lot more money than Neil Smith ever did. Trust me, Neil and I have had this very conversation. Listen, Tyson Jackson was a reach. Everybody knows it. The league knows it. Scott Pioli probably knows it, may not want to admit it. They could have taken Raji, the defensive tackle, from Green Bay. They could have taken any one of these guys. It really boiled down to this. The Chiefs had an opportunity to trade the pick to Detroit Lions for 4 or 5 draft picks. That's a fact. They had an opportunity to really do some nice things. Scott Pioli fell in love with Tyson Jackson, and from his workouts, people at LSU I talked to said, this guy's ready to be a star of the National Football League. He was the fastest rising guy in the draft. He took a risk. But then again, Scott Pioli took a risk in 2010 when he drafted a safety, Eric Berry, and gave him $65 million. That paid off pretty good, too. So he's 1-1 as far as in my book, and I'm fine with that. But you can't – Tyson Jackson, it's all up here. If he wants to be a great NFL player, he has the tools. He's physical enough. It's the desire and the passion. That's what's missing. We saw glimpses of it in the Baltimore Ravens game. But honestly, we haven't seen much since. Alan Bailey at some point will start at left defensive end if this defense is going to get better in 2011.
It's all about expectation. When I'm going to be 42 years old in November, and I remember when Neil Smith was drafted. So it's easy to recognize, hey, if this guy was taken this high, we want to see this guy produce just similar.
It's a different era, it's a different time, and it's also different. It's different matchups. The offensive line, when Neil Smith came up, the offensive linemen weren't as physical. They didn't have the ability to carry as much weight and play effectively as they do now. It's a different football league. Tyson Jackson was a great defensive end. He played in a 4-3. He played with Dorsey. He was inside. He was outside. If the Chiefs want to get productivity, he may be in the wrong defense. It doesn't mean he's going to be a bust, but at this point, this is it. He will not be on this football team in 2012 if he doesn't snap out of it.
We'll be right back after a brief message from Cotman Transmission.
My experience at Cotman was phenomenal.
They worked on my car while I waited. I was in and out in less maybe like 30 minutes.
When you're dealing with your car, you drive it every day. You need someone that you can trust to work on it. It's a good experience.
I'm a Cotman customer for life.
I trust Cotman.
He's my Cotman man, and he keeps me rolling along.
All right, enough about Scott Pioli, Tyson Jackson, the 3-4, the 4-3, Neil Smith, and all this good stuff. Let's talk September 11th, 2011, at Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City Chiefs, Buffalo Bills. What do you see happening, buddy?
Well, I think this is going to be a tough game for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Matt Castle situation aside, looks like he's going to play, which is a good thing. And they'd had to rip the jersey off his back. I mean, he was playing no matter what. But the Bills are a good football team. I mean, Chan Gailey is a good X's and O's guy. It's a no thrills, no frills type of football team. It's an old school mentality. He's got these guys playing well. The Bills played well last year, despite, I think they were 4-12. I think they won their last 4 games. They gave the Chiefs enough fits. 1 second to go, Ryan Suckup kicks the field goal. They lose that game, they may not make the playoffs. So, yeah, you're in overtime. So, listen, Chan Gailey's looking forward to this game. I can tell you that right now. The Chiefs have to be in their A game. They can't assume anything. The first 4 games of this season are absolutely critical if the Chiefs are going to defend the AFC West. They're going to be pretenders or contenders. Beating the Bills by more than 3 points or 7 points is probably a good thing. It'll be a good psyche for the team to head a week later to go in Detroit and face what everybody's predicting is the next Chiefs and Texans. The Detroit Lions are going to win it all this year, which isn't going to be the case. But Matt Castle has to be sharp. Someone else other than Dwayne Bowe has to step up in the receiving corps. Jamal Charles cannot fumble the football. Defensively, Tom Bahali, and they have to unleash Justin Houston. They've got to get both these guys on the field at the same time. You get pressure in Ryan Fitzpatrick's face, the Buffalo Bills starting quarterback, he will make mistakes, and that's what they have to do. But defensively, the Bills will bring it. They will absolutely bring it. It's going to be a tough matchup for the Chiefs. They're going to put 8, 9 guys in the box. They're going to stack up that defense. They're going to make Matt Castle beat them. And they've got a good pass rush. Sean Merriman is rejuvenated. They've got Nick Barnett, who I wanted the Chiefs to pick or to sign as a free agent. They overpaid for him, and that's what you have to do sometimes. But the bottom line is this: do not expect a cakewalk. I do expect the Chiefs to win. I think we're looking at maybe a 7 or a 10-point margin. But this is an extremely critical game, and I don't think the Chiefs are going to take the Bills for granted.
You heard it here first from Chiefs Insider Nick Athan. Once again, I'm Shane Williams with Warpaint TV. Until this Sunday following the Chiefs game, keep it right here at warpaintillustrated.com.
Don't miss another edition of Warpaint Illustrated the magazine. To get your subscription today, call 888-979-0979. That's 888-979-0979, or check out warpaintillustrated.com.